Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen Long, and just so happy to be here interviewing these master filmmakers. And that's not hyperbole. I just, Mason. No, I think, well, and as the audience knows, these are just terrific. And so thank you all for joining us. Congratulations to each of you for this accomplishment. And it's fun to have so many people, but it's also a bit of a challenge because I really want to hear from each of you. And so the number of questions will be limited, but I'd like each of you to answer in your own way, obviously, about your own film. And so I'd like to start with really what was the inspiration for this, for your film? And Nate, I know that you're on a time constraint, so let me start with you. And again, just what a fabulous film that was. And I have a little bit of a comment about that, but why don't you tell us where this idea came from?
And thank you, Stephen. I appreciate that. And well, it just came from the fact I had done a few shorts before, but they were all comedies, mostly kind of slapstick mockumentary, very, very different from the interview, which was a drama. And I just wanted to basically challenge myself. I was very kind of scared to try a drama, but I just wanted to see what it would be like. And I wanted to try to tell a story that I thought would be hopefully captivate the audience, but also leave a little breadcrumbs throughout the story and have a few twists and turns. And there was several clues that I left kind of throughout the film that gave away the ending. And I always am curious to see if most people can find them or not. And most people haven't, thankfully, but it's just something I wanted to do to kind of challenge myself. And that was really the inspiration of trying to tell a story that was very different from any story that I've told before.
It reminded me of a couple of things, and I hope you take both of these as compliments. There's thematically, I think there's something of It's a Wonderful Life. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. That's my mom's favorite movie. So I grew up watching that a lot, especially during Christmas. I mean, it's a fabulous movie just in general.
Yeah.
But so there's definitely some elements to that. I would absolutely say that, and I'd say that was definitely part of an inspiration for sure.
Okay. And I have to tell you, and my wife would agree, I'm not a good detective. So I missed your clues, at least the first time through. What was interesting was, to me, there was a twist at the end, and then there was a twist on the twist. And it was just so well done and so enjoyable. The other thing I would comment on is, at least first time through, there was a sort of a Twilight Zone-ish element to it. And again, any comment on that, or did you have that in mind?
I didn't necessarily have that in mind at first, but it kind of added to that element. And then also we were fortunate enough to have Ray Weiss, who was, I believe, who's an incredible actor. And I think that kind of added to that appeal as well. And that kind of got mixed into it. That was kind of unintentional at first, but then something that kind of just developed and ended up working.
Okay. I'm a writer, and you can plot to your heart's content. And sometimes when you get into it, the characters want to go a different direction. So that may be something that you've experienced as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think you have a certain idea in mind, and then you begin to write it out, and the story continues, at least for me. I mean, everybody's different, has their own kind of method. But at least for me, I noticed that my characters evolve over different rewrites, and also after I get notes back from different people that I trust. I've got a circle of friends that I bounce ideas back and forth with, and the script goes through several versions, and the characters continue to evolve, because I feel like that's important in the story to have good character development, and that's also what's enticing. But it can also be hard to do, especially with a short, because you have a limited time as well. So I think that's another challenge that at least I know I face personally when dealing with shorts.
Yeah. So with all of these, there is a correlation with a short story. In other words, a written literature, and it's not just the length. There's a feel to it, that it feels like a short story, or it feels like a short film. And I think that all of these that were selected capture that feeling. So,
yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
Katie, if I can go to you, this, I wonder what the inspiration is, because that again seemed to, either it was actually personal, you knew somebody that has gone through this, or you've got a heck of an imagination.
Thank you, Steve.
Could be both.
Um, Thank you. Yeah, so I, as a filmmaker, am really attracted to like family drama. So I'm always keeping an eye out for those kinds of stories. And for me, the inspiration for the film came one day where I just got this image in my head of a woman dancing alone in her living room as if with someone, or like as almost as if with a ghost. So I was just kind of struck by that image, and I tried to kind of work from there. It felt like the ending image to a film. So I
Okay.
just kind of worked my way back from there. And at the time, this is where the personal inspiration comes in, but at the time I had lost my grandmother, and so I was dealing with the grief from that. And so I wanted to find a way to weave a story of grief into this image. So it was partly from a random image and partly me infusing it with some personal experiences of mine.
You know, it could have been maudlin, but it wasn't. And I thought that that was a strength of the film. So
Thank you.
kudos for that. And
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that it didn't feel too too heavy or too sad. I wanted it to end on a note that felt hopeful. And I wanted to work with the actress to really specify her journey with losing her husband, and really see the life that she was living and how that life had changed based on this loss. So adding specificity, I think, really brought that human touch to her character versus just really playing into the grief as
well, I
a
was
one
going to
note.
say, the direction could have been a tearjerker. I mean, but you avoided that.
Yeah.
And I agree with that decision. So, and
Well, thank you.
Mason, let me ask you, before we really got started, you kind of alluded to this, but I think I picked up on it anyway. And that is that your film, there's something personal in it, maybe the inspiration, or you tell me.
Oh, we all bring personal ties. At least I hope we all do, from our real life into our stories. But
Sure.
I guess if I had to describe how mine is personal, at least for the inspiration part of it, is yes, as a child I was bullied. No tugging at heartstrings there, but because in the end I did learn my lessons. I did learn many things about how people treat others, as to why they treat people that way, and how to grow from them and become a better person through them rather than become more destructful. And there's your inspiration for that story for the Duck and the Dragon, was instead of taking all the negative things I learned in my life and how everyone treated me negatively and then put it out negatively back, I wanted to learn from them so I could have other people not be treated that way and therefore be better to people instead. So for the inspiration for characters' stories, I had to look at how I was as a kid to how I am now as the adult, and therefore the contrast to the characters both stem from me personally in that sense.
You know, I think it was Louis B. Mayer told his screenwriters, if you want to deliver a message, send a telegram. In other words, don't hit them over the head with the message. And I think you really accomplished what you wanted us to know, but it wasn't overt. So again, good job on that.
Appreciate that.
Plus it was beautiful filming.
If the way I look at the film, I have to tip my hat to my DP. He is one of the best in like my city, let alone my state, and I was honored to work with him. But in terms of the quality that I produced, it was just easy to work with everybody. Everyone works really hard, and everyone worked really, really well together. And I could not have asked for a better film.
Oh, that's great. Sometimes it just all comes together.
Sometimes. Rarely it happens like it does for this film. It's very last minute as opposed to usually everything. I have months to plan, but this one, everything fell together just in the last week, and I could not be more thankful that it did.
Great, great. Pierre, I just love your film, And I have to tell you that the different films reminded me of different things. I have to say your film reminded me of the song Puff the Magic Dragon. And do you see a similarity there?
I'm not sure if I know this song, to be honest.
Oh, okay,
Maybe I know, but I don't know the title, so I can't.
sure.
But thank you. Thank you very much.
About a child losing their imaginary friend as they grow up. So,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to note that.
yeah.
I will do some research about it. Thank you for the reference.
And a little trivia, that actually started as a poem, but then became a song.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
It was interesting to me that the actors, what I would call an accent, are British, and but I think that you've explained that you're working in London. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I am in London, so I work with a British actress. Except for Rehak, the imaginary friend, who is actually from Norway, because I was looking for a not native English accent. I wanted something more exotic, something different, like something more magical. So it's why I worked with this actress who is from Norway to have a different accent for the character, the imaginary friend.
Well, the result was wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And Jody, you're a little bit different, I think, in that this was the 48-hour film project. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I thought you said a different name. Yeah, this is for
Only because I did.
There you go. Yeah, this is for the 48-hour film project a couple of years ago, 2018.
Okay. Oh, okay. And we were trying to figure out the 48-hour constraint. Is that absolutely beginning to end, or is that to come up with the story and then you can film it later, or what's the 48 hours?
It's you get certain prompts, and then as soon as you get those prompts, you have 48 hours to write, film, edit, submit it. So
Really?
everything was done in 2 days.
Not a lot of sleep, I would think.
You know, actually, that's one of the things I'm proud of, is like I feel like we actually took pretty good care of everyone, and
Okay.
people got to sleep better than maybe is normal in this world. So, yeah.
One of the things, given the time constraint, I wondered about your sets. So obviously you found a church that you could use. Did you make the hospital?
So I am a nurse by trade, and so the set is the nursing school that I went to,
Okay.
which is the same school that Cosmo, who I think is a longtime friend of the festival and who's in the film, same school he went to. It's the nursing program there.
Mhm.
And then the church is just like the church that I go to. And those were two of the only locations we had, and ended up really kind of shaping the story. Yeah.
Well, I wondered about that. Now, the pick was part of the prompt. Is that correct?
Yeah, guitar pick was the prompt.
Okay. Well, it was a lot of fun. I'm not sure the cat is sardonic. Maybe that's the wrong word, but dark humor.
I think so. I mean, the part of the way that the 48-hour film project works is that you're given, certain prompts, and one of them is a genre, and we were given dark comedy. So if it made you laugh and feel kind of weird, I think we did it right.
Yeah. Mission accomplished.
Great.
And Jason, how about you? Again, it seems like maybe the theme is estrangement. Where did that come from?
Usually I'm a little bit more creative in where I come up with ideas for stories, but in this case, yeah, I got divorced, and had to figure out how to talk to my kids after that whole process. Those
Okay.
language and cultural divide involved, but yeah,
Well, great job. You could see the two characters kind of where each of them, where their head was at, and where do you go? The frustration of trying to reconnect and not maybe being received in that way.
Yeah, and it's also usually I try to make it so the audience doesn't have to ask, did something just happen after watching one of my films? But in this case, it's a little more subtle because I just, yeah, I didn't feel like big steps were honest to the situation.
Sure.
So
How about the violin? Now, the song was composed for your movie, I think. Is that
Yeah.
right?
yeah, she worked with last year, actually, I did a film about a documentary about a violinist, and she was the consultant on this. And yeah, the actress worked with her a bunch to get that down. She had a violin, but she hadn't played in a bit. You know, she sort of lost track. But yeah,
Well, again, it was just very engaging. So if that was literature, it would be called literary. In other words, it's character-driven rather than plot-driven, I think. So great job on that. And Joe, help me out on yours. My wife and I watched your movie a couple, 3 times, and trying to think, was there was there a single thrust to this? What were you trying to tell us?
What was I trying to say? Well, I mean, I think the focus changes throughout the film on who the movie is about, really. And so I think at the end we remain with the kids and the teacher. So I think that's really where the focus is. I think the whole story was following this this program unfold, but seeing also how the people directly impacted by it have no say in it.
Okay.
Really, they're kind of like they're in the front lines, if you could say that. And then we don't really ask for their opinion. The teacher doesn't give her opinion. The kids don't give their opinion. And it's really all organized around them. So I think that's probably why you felt like there's many threads. Maybe is that the focus shifts throughout to end on the kids, really. Okay. Their perspective and the way they see it and live through that situation.
Okay, well, and actually, let me ask real quick. The fellow who presents the gun, he's the gun guy, the safety guy. I don't know that we ever see who handled the gun, if anyone, when it goes off. But we wondered if the buildup to him is that he's so detail-oriented, like when he reparks the car, and he's so careful. And yet, despite the care, something bad happens. I just wondered if that was part of the theme of that.
It is, because part of that, the reason was that it's really based on the stat that more guns equals more gun violence, not necessarily the people with the guns, but when a gun fires, it just like, you can't stop that. And it's not infallible either. The machines have those. You ask anybody who's been around guns, will tell you, like, sometimes it just goes off. Like it's not often, but it happens. So I think the point we were trying to make too is that it's not really important to know who shot or how, but it's just to know that those things go off sometimes. So it's really more about the accident, because accident happened, really.
Okay. Gotcha. Nate, I wanted to ask you, what is it, how do you like directing yourself?
Well, that's a good question. I don't like it very much, if I'm going to be honest.
Are you tough? You're tough on yourself?
So it's interesting. I'm really critical of myself, and it was much harder for this one since it was a drama. All the other ones that I did before were comedies, and I worked with several other friends of mine that were mostly improv actors. So that was so much easier because it was a lot of fun. Okay. And at least for me personally, it's easier when you're having fun to jump in between acting and directing. But when when you have very serious moments, it was much harder to kind of get in the zone and focus on your character, but also like making sure that you had the shot set up that you wanted as well.
Okay.
So I was very fortunate for this project specifically to also work with a very good AD that also has a lot of directing experience that I trust as well. That I knew that they had my vision in terms of what I wanted for a shot, and I can kind of tell them and explain to them what I wanted, and then not have to run back and make sure that everything was set up in terms of the shot that I wanted. And same thing with my DP. I work with my DP as well. So it was because I had a very strong AD and a very good DP as well that we went over and kind of the exact shots that I wanted, that I didn't have to spend too much time focusing on the other, basically what the shots look like. And thankfully there's very few shots where I'm actually, even though there's a few scenes where I'm interacting with other people, for the most part, it's either just one person or the other. So every time that the camera was on me, it wasn't really on too many other people. So when it did switch to someone else, then I could jump back and kind of direct. But that's kind of the process for me. But in terms of directing myself, I definitely do not enjoy it that much. And I'm very, very critical when it comes to directing myself.
Yeah. I had heard that Woody Allen can be a tough director in the sense that an actor will come to him and ask, how do you want me to play this? And his answer is, well, you know what to do. So, okay.
Yeah, and I was fortunate enough to also hire, in terms of the actors that we hired for this project, and pretty much every project that I worked with before, in terms of like rehearsals and callbacks and auditions, I'm confident that whenever I hire someone that they fulfill, that they can do the role with confidence, and that there's not too much. There might be some small adjustments that I have to make on set, but everything else for the most part, I'm fully confident in what they can do, and that they can provide exactly what I wanted. There's not going to be a huge, discrepancy of what they're doing versus what I want. So a lot of that's already kind of taken care of in pre-production or before we actually start to film.
Does that cut down on the retakes?
Yes, which is important because especially for at least anything that I've done, it's been very low budget, micro budget. So we just don't have a lot of time in terms of the location, don't have the availability, at least for me to do many takes. So we've been fortunate enough to do that, to rehearse enough. So we really hash everything out. So we're not doing that many takes, at least when we're on set. That's at least for every project that I've done personally on my own so far.
Yeah. And I would think financially economical.
Yes, and that's because that's what it comes down to. I mean, ultimately, I would love to have more time. I just, unfortunately, since all of these projects for the most part have been self-financed, or we've had some financing with some of them, but it really hasn't been that much. Or also, people are donating their time or space because they're just friends or family members.
Sure.
I want to respect their time as well. So because of that, we just kind of cut it. And that's probably a good thing in all honesty, because if I had as much time as wanted, I'd probably still be there shooting.
Right. Yeah, that's the way it works. Well, thank you. Raquel, welcome. And I just want to say, I'm so glad you're not my daughter.
Yeah.
Great job with that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, guys, we're in the middle of this pandemic, and it's got to affect you. Katie, you were kind of talking about going back to LA, and maybe will the restrictions be greater? Or I just want to ask each of you, how has this affected you, and what do you do about it? So let me start with you, Katie.
Yeah, so I was actually finishing up my MFA degree at UCLA, which this film was for that program. It was my first film there. So the 2019-2020 school year was my final thesis year. So I really had to pivot with my thesis, which I was supposed to shoot in the summer of 2020. I really had to work with the restrictions and actually completely change my project to do something really small. And so that was definitely a big challenge. And I hope at some point to make my thesis that I wanted to make at some point in the future when conditions are a little better. But that was one adjustment I had to make. Just kind of quickly change directions, figure out how to shoot something in my apartment, basically by myself. And then from there, I've really been trying to focus on the development side. So polishing my short scripts that I have, thinking about feature ideas that I could start writing. So I've just been trying to focus on that because production
pull
has
in.
been, yeah. So yeah, because production has been very tricky. I haven't been in LA extensively really since September. So it's been a while, but like I mentioned earlier, in the chat before this, I'm going into a production next week in Austin. So we'll see how that goes. But it'll be COVID compliant, and obviously there's challenges with that. But I'm not quite sure what the scene is like in LA at the moment. But most
I hear it's
people
not good.
yeah. Um, so hopefully things will get better soon.
Well, stay well while you're doing it. And Mason, how about you?
Thank you.
Did you
You
make
too.
any changes or?
You know, similarly to Katie, it was my last semester for my BFA, doing my thesis film. And we had shot ours February 21st to the 23rd. So we just barely got this done shot-wise, just before everything closed down, especially
Okay.
school too. It was the editing process that really got tricky because I could not meet with my editor in person. She was petrified of the idea of me coming to her and sitting down with her and doing, you know, the normal director-editor kind of collaborations. So that took about a month to 2 months longer than it should have. And on top of that, I actually had to finish it due to complications with schedules and with COVID on top of that. So it got messy then, but overall, COVID thankfully did not affect me too much. And it wasn't until you know, things continued to get worse post college graduation that I was like, I can't really pick up a new project just yet. You know, there's not many film sets going on in St. Louis right now. In fact, except for the one I'm going to be on tomorrow. Other than that, everything has been pretty steady and or quiet. And since now that I will be fully vaccinated soon and things are opening up again and film sets are arising, I'll be starting my next 2 projects coming up.
Good. Well, again, you and everyone stay safe. Jason, how about you? You were, obviously the set is indoors. What did you run up against? And did you have to make any changes because of that?
We shot this long before COVID.
Okay.
It was actually done, well over a year before. It was like whatever 2019. I think it was done in 2018 actually. But it's funny because we probably still could have pulled it off just because the characters are never actually like even in the same frame together.
Okay.
You know, which is sort of a choice that was made, you know, intentionally just because the characters aren't connected. But like we just shot something. Was it 2 weeks ago, Raquel? When was the? 2 weeks ago we shot something, but that, you know, that involved going outside, having characters who are like, you know, 20 feet apart, you know, shooting arrows at each other and like having wire mics and like shouting. Like that's the kind of scene that I write now that I can film. You know, get the 100mm lens, spread everyone out, have a reason for them to be not near each other. You know. And
well, then that changes the writing as well. I mean, in the writing, you have to anticipate that.
Yeah. I think I've directed actors to be shouting more than I ever have in the past. I'm like, no, you're. I'll add crowd noise later, but you're standing outside a bar. It's really loud. Just pretend like there's people and there's stuff, you know, because you can't. Yeah. It's all the way it is now. But.
Okay. Well, Pierre, I know you did this in London, and I don't know what the time frame is. Now they're having a tough time. Were you able to avoid that, or were you in the thick of it?
So I shot it before COVID, so I was lucky for that. And then the post-production finished. Actually, I did the color grading in Paris in March 2020. Okay. So that was very the beginning of the COVID. So and since the COVID started, I didn't have the chance to do any production because the COVID just stopped everything.
Sure.
I mean, in US, in London, in Paris, everywhere. So I took that time actually just to write a feature script. So because writing, I just need my place, my laptop, and my brain to write. So that's basically what I am doing during the COVID,
Okay.
and some work as well, but more like you still have some editing, everything about editing, animation, a lot of stuff, a lot of film that doesn't require shooting are easier to be made, like
Okay.
animation. But yeah, we have a tough time here, especially since the school are closed because I have 3 kids, and yeah, but it's fine. It's fine.
Okay. And it sounds like,
I just keep writing, so it's
okay. But it sounded like you may be doing something with animation in the future.
no, I'm working on different projects as well, you know, like brand and contents, stuff like that. And when you do animation, you don't need to go out, so
Yeah.
you don't face the COVID problems.
Okay. Okay. And Joe, did you was this pre-COVID or how did you handle that?
Yeah, we shot in the summer of 2019, so that was not an issue. And obviously, this project would not happened otherwise because we have so many people in the same room.
Sure.
So COVID on this film really impacted the festivals, and because we finished it in February and we premiered in April, so during this whole time it's been online. But thankfully, like festival like yours are, you know, doing great online festivals, and so the film could be seen and watched. But I've never seen it with an audience, so that's kind of the downside of that. But I mean, it's so small compared to what people have to deal with, really. I did manage to shoot another project over the summer in Seattle when we had a very low cases and the kind of a window to shoot something. I was supposed to shoot something much involving more people in late spring, but so we canceled that one out, obviously, because we couldn't get city permits and all that stuff. So like everybody else, I kind of thought about a different idea, something much smaller with less talents and interacting with each other. And so we shot that in September. And so we're in post right now. But yeah, I think just like everybody else, really, that kind of had to shift the plans and ideas and all that. And so, yeah,
Okay.
that's about it.
It sounds, and I talk about pulling in, but it sounds like a lot of writing or a sort of solitary, maybe not the project is solitary, but this part of it, whatever you can do on your own.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that short film that we shot over the summer is just literally one actress. So that made it easier. She didn't have to interact with anybody else. So that was good.
Sure.
COVID friendly.
6 feet away.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I'm going to leave it there, but thank you so much. And again, I know you are, but kudos. I hope you're so proud of what you've done because this is just terrific. And best of luck in the future. Please come back. We want to keep doing this. So
Thank you, Steve.
thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Raquel, thank you for joining us too. It was great. So
Thank you.
thanks, folks.